Make some Kraft macaroni and cheese. Please, please make some Kraft macaroni and cheese. It's nice and cheesy and it's really pretty easy. Please make some Kraft macaroni and cheese.
So let's look back at what the Doomed Planet podcast had to offer this year. Episode 55, Florida Death Trip, The Villages. This is a planned community in Florida that is kind of a nightmare. It's where Republican white people from the Midwest go to die and have orgies before they die. It's very sick. And just look at Google Maps, and it's like these, the same suburban house they had back home crammed onto a lot, and then there are these waterways. They're not, it's like an insect breeding ground. So you want to revisit the Villages? I'd never wanted to go back, but 3 Republican supporters from Trump-backing Florida complex, the Villages, arrested for voter fraud. Hello and welcome to Doomed Planet's Sleazy second season, 2021 in review. We launched this podcast right when the pandemic started, and I was doing 1 episode a week in 2020, and we fell way behind in 2021, as many podcasts will do, doing it only once a month. But we're going to step it up a little bit in 2022. I'm going to start writing some scripts in advance instead of just winging it. Of course, scripts for a podcast can be just a list of notes and links. It's a lot easier than, say, writing an actual screenplay. God, just these typical 60 and 70-year-old, white racists moving to Florida. Watch out. People, Florida is filled with black people. They'll come get you, you chuds. Joan Halstead, 72, of the village of Palo Alto. Again, the Villages, it's a cluster of planned communities, all developed and mostly still owned by one family. Joan is facing a felony charge of fraud. Document on file in Sumter County Court indicates she cast a 2020 general election ballot in person in Sumter County. She also cast a second ballot in New York by absentee. She is a registered Republican, and her social media activity suggests she is a supporter of former President Donald Trump.
Tonight, investigation into voter fraud has landed 3 people from the Villages in jail. Authorities say that each of those 3 voters cast multiple ballots during the 2020 election.
News 6 investigator Mike DeForest is following this developing story for us. So, Mike, despite these recent arrests, voter fraud is still very rare.
Lisa, it appears this may be the first time in at least 20 years that anyone in Sumter County has been arrested and prosecuted for casting more than 1 vote. And we could find very few similar cases in other Central Florida counties.
So you might be wondering, did any residents of the Villages die this year of COVID? Probably. Here we have retired Sumter County Sheriff's deputy dies from complications from COVID-19. The Sheriff's Office announced that retired Deputy Andy Wills died last week. He retired in 2020 after nearly 25 years of service, abusing, beating on, torturing, and murdering black people. That's one part of the job description, especially in Florida. Andy Willis, 67. That's too young to die after you worked your whole life at that shitty job, and then you have no retirement. From Wildwood, Florida, passed away in Oxford, Florida, October 27th. He's born in London, England. Wow. To Andrew and Iris Wills, He's a deputy. He was on the SWAT team. Yeah, oh, that's really essential. There's domestic violence. Get like 12 heavily armed cops to bust in there. He enjoyed shooting guns and playing golf. God, I really hate this guy, and I'm glad that he died. He's survived by his wife and his Michelle, his son Drew of Wildwood. His son Drew. Florida detention deputy accused of distributing child porn. The sheriff's office says the picture of a little girl was uploaded on a social media website. This is Andy Will's son, Drew. So before Andy died, after having not enjoyed much retirement, he saw his own son arrested for child porn. Sumter County, Florida. A Florida detention deputy is learning what it's like on the other side of the bars, as the Sumter County Sheriff's Office says it arrested one of their own. Now, former Deputy Andrew Wills was arrested and charged with 2 counts of distributing child pornography. According to a news release, the 27-year-old uploaded a picture of a girl. Investigators got a search warrant, searched Will's devices in Wildwood, Florida, that linked him to the original image. The sheriff's office says he was placed on leave and then fired. $4,000 bail. Okay, let's move away from Florida cops and their jail detention worker offspring who are also child pornographers. And episode 56 last year, Communist Teen Returns. So yeah, a year later, he's still a communist, very active with others of his age. Who, and the pandemic, if anything, has exposed what is wrong with society to these kids and how to fix it. And they're working on that. They're also doing an NFT scam. So, hey, you still need money in this world to get things done. And so, the crypto thing, yeah, it's a great means of exchange, but it's basically, if you want to get any money out of it, you exchange it for dollars. So wait a minute. So what is it?
Lehman Brothers is going bankrupt, and financial markets from Asia to Europe are doing their utmost to prevent Monday from turning from dark to black.
Doomed Planet Podcast, year in review. We're looking back at our episodes. Number 57. They died. Edward Gorey, Charles Schultz, and Jeff Tilroe. Yeah, whatever. If I could re-record that episode, I would talk more about Jeff's brother, Jason. And again, when Jeff shot himself, I think it was the next day, I went 3 doors down to his house, and because my parents said, "Oh, you got to go pay your respects," and I was like, "Yeah, I'm sorry." So that's the last time I saw Jason, but Jason Tilroe received the largest amount of $24 million across 3 years. He had joined Lehman Brothers in 2004 from Goldman Sachs to run its Risk Solutions group in Europe. So again, my friend who shot himself at a young age, his brother, they're both adopted from Korea and not related to each other, became one of the chief villains of the global financial meltdown. Lehman Brothers raids Goldman for corporate derivatives head. Lehman Brothers hired Jason Tilroe. Again, Lehman Brothers collapsed. It's hard to go into how much suffering occurred because of this Wall Street fuckery. And I don't mean among people like Jason, but, people that lost their house, right? Tilroe took up the position on Monday. He reports to Philippe Defournier, head of European derivatives sales. Again, all these guys are criminals, and Jason, none of these people served a day in jail, and Jason, is very wealthy, and he has a wife and family and lives in a Tony suburb somewhere. Episode 58 was Chris Cornell's icky widow, Vicky Cornell. And sorry we have to even revisit this horrible person. After a year and a half of contentious litigation, Soundgarden and Vicky Cornell, the wife of late singer Chris Cornell, have reached a temporary agreement on at least one piece of their ongoing lawsuit. Under the agreement, Soundgarden and its management team will take control of Soundgarden's social media channels and website, which Vicky Cornell had been operating. Through the courts, the band had previously sought an injunction against Cornell and accused her of locking the band out of the accounts after Chris's death. In the interim, Soundgarden's surviving members, Kim, Matt, and Ben, had launched social media handles of their own under the anagram Nude Dragons, a name the band used for its famous 2010 reunion at the Showbox. It's so just for the record, I was the art director designing the Soundgarden's first website. And then we did a redesign where I drew all these weird insects and stuff for this. I don't know. I have all these files saved. But it was weird. So Susan Silver, the manager of the band, and then Chris's first wife, of course, very savvy with marketing and stuff, and knew this internet thing coincided with Soundgarden's peak of fame. So we had Soundgarden.com. That was the site I designed, and then you had Soundgarden.rocktropolis.com too, because Susan wanted to cover all her bases. And like Rocktropolis was some LA hipster who had this idea for a, rock website. And boy, was my mind poisoned by these 90s hipster bands. I'm not going to design a website and then pretend to like the band. Like I love the band, and so at least that made it tolerable. So Vicky Cornell, Icky Vicky. From Rolling Stone magazine, previously unseen photos from Chris Cornell's final photo shoot to be sold as NFTs. Pictures from a 2017 session with acclaimed photographer Randall Slavin. I've mentioned this on the podcast before. Of all art forms, photography, especially rock photography, is the one that takes the least amount of talent. Never before seen footage from Chris Cornell's final photo shoot will be minted and sold as non-fungible tokens. The sale... What? This is suicide. NFTs, suicide. Randall is like family, Vicky Cornell said in a statement. God. Welcome to the Doomed Planet podcast. Year in review. Going back to 2021, seeing what happened in episode 59. Did Curt Cobain eat food? I don't know what to revisit about Curt Cobain. I like him less and less as the years go by, and realize that he wasn't as talented as I thought, and that like he's playing guitars fine, but he's not brilliant at it. The New York Post says that Robert Pattinson's Batman movie was inspired by Curt Cobain. So the only superhero movie, well, I saw Superman, what was that, in the 70s? The only superhero movie I've seen is Tim Burton's Batman. That's from 1989. And I hated it so much. I walked out of the theater, sign of mild depression, but I'm like, it was so dark. I couldn't see anything. Hated it. I have not seen one of those Marvel, whatever that digital crap is. So movies, they have a big impact on people. That's why I try to stay away. I've had a couple, periods of depression after seeing movies. One was Godfather 3. Boy, I was so amped up to see that because, of course, Godfather 2 is one of the greatest movies ever. Boy, walking out of that theater, I was shell shocked. What crap. Looking at episode 61 from last year, titled Jackie Mason and the Guy from ZZ Top. I think we were just complaining at this point that not too many prominent people died in 2021. And that still is the case. I mean, I'm predicting a huge bump in 2022. But Jackie Mason, the guy from ZZ Top. Who else died this year? Larry King. He's 87, died of coronavirus. God. Dustin Diamond was this TV star. I'm too old to, I'm aware of the show he was on. It was stupid. Prince Philip died on April 9th, aged 99. He went almost 100 years without ever washing a dish, doing a load of laundry, or actually doing anything useful at all. He was the longest-serving consort in British history. Also father to Prince Charles. Wow, what an accomplishment. Prince Charles, let's not be, Princess Anne, and also Prince Andrew, Jeffrey Epstein's friend. He'd been married to the Queen for 73 years. Another prominent Brit, Rolling Stones drummer Charlie Watts, died. He was 80. And yeah, I like him. You got to respect a good drummer, especially one that his personality is sane and he's sort of there are two kinds of drummers: the wackos and then the sane people. They're keeping an even beat. Michael Nesmith of the Monkees died. He was 78. And Grace Mirabella was 92. Editor who brought Vogue down to earth. And this wealthy white woman celebrated she broke off from Vogue magazine to start her own magazine that Rupert Murdoch funded. And it was less bourgeois somehow because they had articles about how to do gardening and stuff. I don't know. Joan Didion, we got shout outs to her, a new journalist to mention the white guy, compatriots, Hunter Thompson or Tom Wolfe, explored culture and chaos. Eve Babbitt, 78, hedonist with a notebook. This is, again, celebrating these boomers who partied and did too much coke. She's this socialite in Hollywood. Bob Dole. Bob Dole died in 2021. He was 98 years old. No comment. And Richard Rogers. Again, God, obituaries have sucked this year. Not too many people. Kissinger still alive. Richard Rogers was 88. architect behind Paris's landmark Pompidou Center. Kind of industrial brutalist crap. See you in heaven, Richard. Episode 63, Athens, Ohio overdoses. We talked about people dying of drugs in my hometown. Might have mentioned Mickey Priestley, died in an alley in Columbus, Ohio, of an overdose after getting released from prison. And, this is a guy, very talented. He was in the high school plays. He was on the football team. He played hockey. He was charming. All the women loved him, and just kind of went downhill. And he had his life as a middle-aged man, kind of sad. Here's a video clip or audio clip.
The words that tumbled out of me, it was like, one of those startling things. And I didn't even have a chance to think. I just said, Laura, I have a drinking problem and I need help.
In episode 64, Seattle Halloween horrors, we dredged up some newspaper articles from 100 years ago about Seattle crime. And we talked about the elections, Seattle politics. Bruce Harrell, who lives dangerously close to the Doom Planet podcast basement headquarters, did win. He's now the mayor of Seattle. Incredibly, Jenny Durkin, the tear gas Jenny, this recent development, the Seattle City Council, without Kshama Sawant present, voted unanimously to end the hazard pay for grocery workers, like a $4 an hour extra pay. And then Jenny, one of the worst mayors of Seattle ever, did the right thing and vetoed that proposal. So the hazard pay remains for my brothers and sisters of UFCW 21. Crazy, but real.
Well, Seattle city leaders have changed their minds. Last week, they decided to end hazard pay for grocery store workers. Today, they said it should stay. King 5's Ted Land has been following this story for us. And Ted, why the abrupt change?
Well, that's because COVID cases are once again rising, and the mayor and city council leaders say they think grocery store workers are still working under hazardous conditions, and they should continue to receive an extra $4 an hour.
Here's an example of how half-assed this podcast has been this year compared to 2020, when I put a little bit of effort into doing a weekly podcast. This year it became monthly, and then it was kind of seat of the pants. Episode 65, Sleeping Hard in Seattle. That's going to be my big, opus about homelessness in Seattle and all the tents. And then that devolved into me wandering around the International District for like 2 hours, speaking into my phone, talking about the decline of that neighborhood and the history of that neighborhood. But I had temporarily lost my dongle, which is the device that I plug from the iPhone into an actual microphone that is any good. And so all this, my musings that day sucked because the audio is not up to my, level of what I deem acceptable, even again, as we devolved this year. So episode 65 does not exist. And finally, episode 66, Herman Cain Award winner Doug Ericksen, this total asshole state senator in Washington State. COVID denier, and people believe this shit. I think this motherfucker went to Harvard and stuff. Like, so he is not an idiot, but he's using the COVID stuff as a, I don't know, but he died and he's dead. And so we can't chop his head off in the public square, you know, with thousands of people cheering that because he died of COVID. See you next year. Doom Planet is a product of the Wild World News podcast network. You can find us on Twitter, I guess, but no one gives a shit. Goodbye. Hey, see you next year, 2022, for Doomed Planet Season 3. Our first season was about Seattle crime. The second season was about obituaries, and we're just going to stick with obituaries because there are people that we want to die so we can celebrate that, like Henry Kissinger. Good night.
When you fish for tuna, you watch, you wait, and you make ready. Then you spot them. Tuna! And you better get them while they're running, because you get no second chance. All the gusto in the world's out there, and now is the time to get it. You only get one crack at life, so you look for all the gusto you can. The life you live, the work you do, even in the beer you drink. When you're out of Schlitz, you're out of beer.